Organizational can range from just the way the system is set up, right? It's set up in order to, in some ways, give you something, but then it takes something back, right? So look at the healthcare system, for instance, or the educational system. The kids come to school, they're there to learn something, but then they get beat down. You know, their little psyches, their developing, blossoming minds are squandered. Their creativity is squandered. They encounter conflicts. Their self-esteem is denigrated, right? And they get little bits of education in the process. Of course, I'm not talking about every school, but there's a lot of teachers out there who are narcissists and who take out their sadistic inclinations onto innocent students. And also there are students, or you get usually a mix. Some can come from very traumatizing backgrounds, who already have, you know, that the seed planted in them, and then you of course have the helpers and the codependents, and you begin, the abuse just continues on in the environment when they're supposed to feel safe and learn. And true creativity really cannot blossom until you feel safe. You know, it's been proven scientifically. So doctors, I have recently had an experience myself where a doctor did something wrong and I had to go back and have it redone. And oh my God, the attitude and everything was just, you know, horrible. And this was my tooth. And I just felt like the service I got the second time around was like, was almost as if the doctor on purpose wanted to cause me pain. You know, it didn't give me enough not antiseptic, what do you call it, you know, when you get numb, right? I didn't get enough of that, and as I was sitting squirming in the thing, and I almost felt like they enjoyed that. Anyway, I was really sick, but I'm sure you have your own horror stories. Another form would be at work, and this is something I really want to talk more about because I have experienced so much abuse working in Silicon Valley for 12 years in many different organizations. And of course, me being the codependent that I am, I would draw sociopaths and narcissists into my circle. So I have a lot of horror stories to talk about it, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure there's lots of people who suffer. And especially if you're the kind of person who associates your own sense of self-worth with achievement. I made a video about that too. If you have a chance, check it out. And that of course goes back to childhood, but what it does is, you know, sociopaths, psychopaths, they are very keen at sensing your vulnerabilities. They almost smell it, like sharks in the water smell blood. And so they will start to at first be really sweet and then ask you to do things for them, and before you know it, you're running around in circles doing the work that wasn't even part of your job title. And I hear this a lot. It's a form of narcissistic abuse. But because not many people really talk about it, it really slips under the radar. Plus, people don't know how to talk about it because their job is threatened, right? So it's awful. Now let's go to second type, and I need to be careful here because I get easily triggered when I talk about politics. But obviously, we've gotten to the point in the history of our civilization. Now, a lot of it is my opinion, what I'm saying now, so take it with a grain of salt or do your own research. But I feel like we have gotten to the point where things are sort of peaking out. And usually after big disasters where civilizations are sort of building from scratch, it takes some time before the scum, right? The scum of people rises to the top. And because there are checks and balances that are put into place, there are procedures, there are laws, and we're seeing all of that being destroyed right now because I believe we've reached the peak where just politicians that are taking office during this time now are mostly cluster Bs, you know, because for a person who's loving and kind and creative, they don't really want to be in politics because they want to express themselves differently. And then those people who do want to give service and who do want to devote their life to helping others, oftentimes as they rise to the top, to the higher echelons of politics, they get squandered down by those who are already down there. So instead of, I get this visual, instead of like pulling people up the ladder, right? Like, come on, I'll help you succeed. And then we can all live in bounty. We can all celebrate. They are just like, stepping onto the fists of people who are trying to climb. What they don't see is that if you create too much of a divide between the rich and the poor, suddenly there will be a point where no one will be able to afford the products that those on top are making. So the economy is going to come to a screeching halt. Now, I don't know if what we're witnessing now is a countdown to some form of a, Armageddon, where they're just trying to get as much as they can, as quickly as they can, and then, withdraw into some form of an enclaves. Sorry, my accent is can't always pronounce things properly, but I think you get the idea, right? So they retreat back, and then you have sort of the slaves, the poor, the sick stay outside the castle walls. So we started with monarchies and kind of ending with a form of a totalitarian capitalistic monarchy. I don't know where it's all headed, but what I do know is that it just resembles so much on a large scale the narcissistic relationship, where just the system sucks all the blood it can from environment, from people, in order to bloat itself up. So, very triggering subject for me. So, and I also want to add here one more thing, which is that after having done a lot of research into ancient history and also studying conspiracy theories, because you kind of can't do one without the other, I have come to this conclusion, and it's not a final conclusion, it's work in progress, but I feel like originally where spiritual institutions were being set up in order to promote ritualistic forms of prayer or just way to get to the divine, right? Because I believe that it started the moment a conscious man that can be self-aware looked up into the sky at night before there was much atmospheric light pollution, and they saw the splendor of the universe. They must have just thought, wow, there's some higher power that is architecting all of this thing, and I'm a part of it. So in the early days of our civilization, and it may have actually been even way before Holocene, so prior to 10,000 BC, and I'm really getting into an area that I like to write fiction about, right? But I believe that there were probably tribes and communities and congregations that have figured out ways, whether it was through ingesting certain plant medicines and things, to get closer to that divine state. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I also don't think there's anything wrong with money and having an economic system where instead of always bartering and trading for things or having to do it all yourself, you now have something that represents value, and it just makes things so much more smooth, right, and easier to exchange. The problem is when these forms of social systems get co-opted by narcissistic people, who then find a way to use the analogy that Richard Grannon uses, basically stick their straw in your milkshake and suck it up, right, and drink it up. And so you're seeing this pooling of material wealth and this pooling of spiritual control, and now other things such as spreading fear through warfare and all that. It's all being concentrated in this small area. They say that it's about 10% of population that are cluster Bs. I believe it is way higher. I believe it's closer to 50%, honestly. I think it differs depending on which region in the world you are. The more modern first world countries, the higher the narcissistic ideals, mostly because of what media is pumping into our culture, making us feel like we have to look this way and act this way and have all this and that in order to have value. And if you buy into that hypnosis, then you're really in trouble. You're really in trouble. So they want that in order to continue the economic drivers, right? To keep that going, because then they have you trapped. They have you in debt, and you can just not work enough in order to pay that ever off. So they have you at their disposal all the time. Okay, But of course, there's a way out of that too. But that, I should make another whole video about it, and I will, because we need to set ourselves free, and there is a way. There are many ways. There are millions of ways. You just have to find your own. But there's a system in place, and there's certain things that repeat, and certain processes that you need to consider. But you can be free of that. You can absolutely free yourself from that monstrosity. And hopefully a lot of us will before it is too late. And therefore we can create a beautiful life instead of this destructive, horrible reality we're living in right now. Okay, my final form of abuse is cultural abuse. Again, we're seeing a lot of that. It happens where people are being made to conform to a preset values in order to feel like they fit in, and they can be bullied into it. They can be, their prejudice is part of this, racism is a part of this. Any form of where somebody who seems to be different, whether it's because of their hair, because of their clothing, the color of their skin, now all that bullshit, whenever they feel like they're different or they bring in different customs now and they don't belong, they need to, instead of looking at it like, oh, interesting, you're different, well, what are you, right? Coming to approaching differences with curiosity instead of with attitude of being threatened. Because when you bring up that attitude of being threatened, then that other person senses that and conflict arises. So cultural openness would be definitely a great way to overcome this. And I think it's really happening. I feel like as more people move about the earth and we communicate via our social media channels, we're starting to notice the similarities between us. And I think people are getting also more curious about learning other languages, about learning about plant medicines or ancient old customs and cultures. So hopefully it's going in the right direction. But because that too has been co-opted by narcissists who are constantly stirring conflict between people and dividing them to conquer them, we're unable to make as much of a progress, at least it doesn't look like it, than we should. Because it's my belief, and I'm so curious to hear what you think about this. Let me know. But I believe that if they were to leave us alone, we would be living in paradise tomorrow. Right? We would be constructing Eden. And I don't mean the utopia and, some form of my own idealized version of what that is, but something that is that values cooperation, that values creativity, somewhere where people feel safe, where children can be brought up in a way so they can be really who they are instead of being made to be who their parents think they should. This is going to take several generations, unfortunately. Me being the idealist, I have thought for a long time that if we can get on the right track, maybe in my lifetime I will be able to see a really different world. But I'm starting to realize that this is such a transgenerational issue that there's not enough people knowing about this. So if you do know someone who could benefit from this video and is struggling right now, please share it with them. Spread the news. Share other portals, websites. Inner Integration, incredible channel that I really stand behind and support, and a bunch of others. So, and first of all, reach out to each other. If you feel like someone is struggling, that does not mean that you have to forsake yourself, but maybe you can give them a piece of information so they can go on and do their own research. I remember when I first heard the word narcissist, that was in 2010, I believe. So it took me 7 years to finally find, 6 years, because I started my healing journey, really it kicked into high gear in the fall of last year. So, but I remembered it. I'm like, okay, I think that this is what it is. And of course I found it, and I went down that path, and oh my God, I'm so grateful to all the people who have done research and put out information out there. So I hope that this video helps you too. I hope that I'm in any way able to contribute. Know that you are not alone. There's millions of us suffering. Know that there's a way out of this nightmare. 6 months ago, I had thoughts of committing suicide. Now I am in the process of creating a new life that I did not know was possible. I'm feeling more serene, more sure of myself, and more confident every day. Healing is possible. Another life is possible. I am here for you. I'm standing by to cheer you on, do not give up. Keep going, you'll get through this.